Greetings. Welcome back to the Old Ways Rising Farm YouTube channel for a little bit of flint knapping conversation and doing. I want to talk today a little bit about something that I think is underrepresented in the YouTube space with respect to flint knapping, and that is square cross-section work. Okay, there's lots of guys making points. There's no shortage of just simple making a point videos on YouTube. That's why I'm trying to do some things that are a little bit different here and avoiding what's already oversupplied. But there's not a whole lot on making square section work, square cross section. Okay, this is a little square section celt blade that I made a couple weeks ago. It's not perfect, but I think it's reasonably good, reasonably representative of the type. Okay. Before I get into how to do this, I want to talk a little bit about why you would do this and where it comes from. And to have that conversation, we need to back up a step and talk about what a more common lenticular cross-section axe blade is and why it can be a problem. And this is an example of that type. This could, an axe blade or celt blade like this could be from literally anywhere in the world, right? Pretty much everybody has made something like this. And this is made using the conventional flint knapping techniques where you have an edge, okay, and you run flakes in across the center to thin it down and build a profile, okay. This was kind of a cruddy piece of Coastal Plains Chert that has kind of turned me off from Coastal Plains Chert, to be totally honest. It's got lots of shells and it didn't run flakes well, but it's a reasonable representative of the type for this conversation. But if you look at it on edge in the profile, right, you can see it tapers to both edges. Okay. Now, you can certainly use this for an axe blade as well as you can use any other stone axe, but it has a problem. The dominant way that you would half these, again, no matter where in the world you look, is to have basically a bat with a mortise cut in it, and then this slips in the mortise, right, and then it impacts on the wood this way, okay, and it's tapered both to the base and, it's tapered to the base in this profile and to the base in this profile, so it wedges into that mortise when you pound it in. The problem is, if you think about my hand being the mortise and this wedging into it, because it tapers at the edge, that acts as a wedge. So as this seats deeper and deeper and deeper into that mortise, it's trying to split your bat lengthwise. That's not good. That makes it very difficult to half these in a secure way, right? So when you're hafting these, you have to have them in such design so that they wedge in the sides and are pressing outward on the mortise, rather than wedging against the edges, trying to act as a wedge. But even with that, they still tend to split. Now, here in North America, there's a lot of square cross-section axes to solve this problem, but they're all made with peck and grind techniques, right? It's ground stone work. They're ground argillite or ground slate or ground greenstone, okay? You go to other areas of the world, there's also a lot of ground jade, which is the best of them all, okay, the best stone material. But in Northern Europe, you have, in Northern Europe and also in Polynesia, there's a version of this that's done in basaltic materials, okay. They're different. The Polynesian version is more difficult, more sophisticated than the European version. I have yet to successfully replicate it. I'm working on it, but I've got a stack of failures at this point. So I'm going to be honest about that, right? The European version is more straightforward because it's all flat. So in Northern Europe and in Polynesia, you get chipped square section work, okay? And this is also used then to make some really sophisticated cutting tools called the Danish daggers. It uses the same suite of techniques. So I'm working on it. I have not yet successfully replicated the Polynesian hog's back blades, but we're going to make one of these Northern European simple thin butt axe square section work. So if you're interested in that, come join in and we'll talk about how it's different from regular flint knapping. Evaluating a stone. This is a piece of Texas chert. This is about as big as I can get rock on a regular basis, which is part of why most of my stuff is smaller in size. But that's okay. We can still work with it. We can still learn from it. And it's nice to work with this material because it's so readily available. You can just eBay a box of this for relatively little money, you know, anywhere, anytime. So we're going to work with this rock. Now, the strategy for how we get into this is going to be different from conventional knapping. Okay. First, we want to get it into a controllable shape. Okay. Then we're going to shear the edges into something which is close but at least a third larger in every dimension. Okay? And then we will start working with punch techniques using this little copper punch. Okay? And you have to use punching to go into the square edge knapping. Okay? You can work from a biface, right? If you have something like this, you can shear the edges off and work it towards a square edge tool. This one is too thin. This doesn't have enough meat in it anymore to do that, but you can work from a biface. But since this is already relatively axe-ish looking, we'll coin a term there, and the edges are already relatively square-ish looking, it's a little bit more straightforward. Now, evaluating the stone, we want to get the really big chunks knocked off while we're still doing percussion work. Okay, so looking at this piece, I don't have a great way to do percussion work directly on this face, but I'm not worried about being able to get these knobs off with punch work. So we're just going to do a little bit of initial flattening. And if you see, I'll point, you can probably see it best from this angle. This needs to come off, and this needs to come off. If I show you the edge angle, I can work directly here on that tip, and I can work directly here on this big chunk. So we're going to do this, and that's not going to take too much time at all, and is not any different from any other normal flint knapping. Just taking some thinning flakes to get this flat-ish. Is there a point in there? Yeah, there might be a point in there. Okay, so now if I hold this up, you can see we're getting control there. That's all I wanted to accomplish. This one, I'm going to go to a bigger bopper. Maybe I can get a nice big spall off of here. We'll see. This Texas is fairly readily available, not real expensive, so I'm not as animated about making sure I save every last bit as I am with some other materials. But we still want to get what we can. Okay, so now this is relatively flat. That's good. I'm not going to work this face. Now, to shear it, we're going to take our stone. And again, you would do this with this the same way with the biface as I'm going to do it with here. Okay, so we're going to take our stone. I don't need quite that big a bopper. Tilt this up at as steep an angle as possible. And just start almost as though it's a blade core. And just knock some flakes off. Okay, so this is one of those concrete pockets that Texas is famous for. They do not carry flakes well. They're a pain in the butt. Okay. Okay, so I'm just bringing in a little bit. I'm going to work on this side some. coming in. And I'm debating. So here, I don't want to take any more off of the tail end of that. I do want to take a little bit more off here before I switch to the punch, because things are going to slow way down when we switch to the punch. But it's only going to give me so much. Okay. Not going to work on the edge yet. This will be the edge. That'll be the base. Even things out a little bit. Now you can only go so far with your percussion work. And that's because these edges are sloping. Okay? You have to be able to get into it. So after, the edge is always going to kind of dive in toward the face you're not hitting. Okay? These always end up with that angle.
Just because physics.
Just because physics, yes. And there's a point at which, if I keep hitting it here, I'm trying to drive, I'm going from the flake going here to here to here. It's going deeper and deeper into the rock every time I take a flake off the edge. Okay? And there's a point at which it just won't work anymore. There is no more avenue of approach. It just isn't going to happen. Because if I tip it up anymore to be able to take a thin enough flake, eventually it just is too close to vertical that the bopper just skids off. Okay? That's when we switch to punch work. Now also on this face, you can see I have this slope going in the wrong direction. And it's time to switch to punch work here. So the principle that's going to let us do the punch work is that everywhere I hit it, there's this little bulb of percussion. So now I can go the other direction by taking the punch, sending it in that bulb, and then punching off a small flake, which will then leave a bulb there that I can then dig into to punch this way. Okay? And that's why you have to do this with a copper punch. The period where these were made in Europe was the period where you have copper and bronze technology starting to come in, but not coming in sufficient quantity to replace all the material needs of the people. So you have a small number of copper tools, but stone tools are still the dominant day-to-day thing. So this face is relatively clean. I don't want to mess here too much, any more than I have to. But this face still needs a lot of work. The problem is I don't have a great approach to do percussion, and I've got to find a place to just start getting the punch to dig in. I think I have one right here. There's this one flake that kind of dug in. I think I can get in there and start to pop on this. So we're going to completely switch around our work holding. Instead of doing this against my leg, I'm going to fold my leather pad and pinch it between my knees. Okay? And now I'm going to get the punch up here, hold it, and I'm just going to give it a pop, which is kind of like the paddle end of this moose antler billet. Okay? And there's this little flake that we pulled off, right? I'll show that to you. Just like so.
Love it.
Okay? So now we've reduced that mass. It's a much nicer piece. And I now have a little spot here that I can go the other direction. I still have an undercut, so I'm not going to quite do that yet. We'll get there. I really want, can I get in? I can also do this. Let me see. This may or may not go. Yep, got it. Okay. So there. Now we'll come in here. We really want to get access to this. This will give me access to here. I really want access to this. And this is coming too close into the tip. This is the hardest part of it, getting your initial access on the back slope. Maybe right here. And this cortex is going to make it a little bit harder. Nope. This is slow, just study it.
Don't be hasty, little hobbit.
Don't be hasty, little hobbits. There. Okay, where'd that flick? There's that flick. That's better access than I had up here. So we just took that from right here. Okay? So that trued up the side, and now I have a good spot to start working in on this edge. I can use the divot right here, put the punch in, take a nice flake across the top, that divot, allows me to go the other direction. This is very, very slow. Takes a lot more time than conventional Flint knapping. But you can see we're starting to get it. We're starting to get the zigzag coming in here. Okay? Now, we had a failed flake here. I know I can get through that. It's just a little bit too rounded there. I'm going to try again, see if I can dig just a little bit deeper. Again, I don't need a big heavy flake. I just need a spot to put the tool, come back the other direction. There. Good. So this came out of there. Right? That's what we want. Now it's really interesting that this is the historic context of this is at a time when you have an overlap of both stone and metallurgical technologies in the same culture at the same time. And that's far from unique to Europe. Native Americans, copper tools are used by Native Americans for thousands and thousands of years. Some of the archaeological phases in North America that have the most copper also have some of the finest quality flint work. And you'd really have to work hard to try and convince me that that's an accident. Because having these copper tools does open up a lot of avenues. There. Just got to get the right angle. We're not going... But I didn't necessarily need to remove that material right there from the side, but I needed to remove something in order to get that bulb of percussion to get underneath that piece of cortex. This is why we want to leave it quite a bit larger in every dimension, because this stage of going from, you know, that sloping face to a wigwag face here that I can get the punch in and do productive stuff takes a lot of material, and you don't always get to make just exactly the shape of flake that you would prefer. Sometimes you just have to make what you can get. That was a good one.
Sounded good.
Yep, you can see these big bulbs of percussion on these
Gorgeous.
punch flakes. Right, sticking out that big bulb. Then I can use that bulb
To come at it from the other direction.
come at it from the other direction.
Got it.
And I'm angling these. I'm kind of trying to keep them fairly shallow. And this is one of the things that I'm still have quite a bit to learn about from this technique, is controlling the thickness of these flakes. Right, like where's my example piece here, right? So if you look right here, see how it's a nice square all the way along, and then it just dives in and is rounded right there?
Oh, yeah.
That was a flake that ended up being quite a bit bigger than I really wanted with that removal. And it actually matched on the other side. I had the same problem over here. I mean, it's okay. That does not diminish its usefulness as an axe blade. And
Actually, it might be a good thing for hafting.
potentially it would yeah, if you're gonna haft it as a celt blade, that would give bindings a good spot to dig in and grab.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's not a problem. But if you then want to turn around and start doing something more elaborate with a particular shape, that's not just purely utilitarian, just keep working around long. That's not just purely utilitarian. That you know, lack of that detailed control isn't ideal. So, just working along. And I very much like using my knees as a vise for this, because it's easy to do and undo, right? I've seen some guys like pad up a mechanic's vise and clamp the stone in the mechanic's vise. I'll show you another punch flake there. And that has no appeal to me whatsoever, because then, you know, you see how often I'm flipping this back and forth. It's just going to slow you down all the way along.
This is probably also a lot more authentic to how people used to do things.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. So, you see this edge, how it started. And now this edge, we have this nice
Beautiful.
pattern all the way along, right? That's not done. This would still be, you know, very difficult to haft, because those are very, very sharp. If I were to grip this with force, I would just have, you know, 1,000 little cuts on my hand, right? This is very sharp. We're not done. But this back and forth pattern on the edges is what archaeologists call stitching when they're describing these artifacts, because it kind of looks like a baseball stitch done in leather.
I can see it.
Okay? So now this side was being a pain and doesn't have quite as nice a starting point. I'm going to work here again. I saw that opportunity and was like, I'm just going to go for it. I'm on a roll. Okay. So there we got a nice big flake out. Okay. And I mean, you can see if I show you this profile, I don't want it all that much thinner than that. Right? I really don't. I want to keep as much meat in it as I can. Let's see. I think I can get that flake. Yep. Good. Got a little bit of a step fracture there, but we can get that from the other side. That won't be a problem. Now, we can start undercutting all of this business. Okay. Again, this is what I was saying. This is where I still have a lot to learn with this technique. Because I wanted that flake to go across this way. Something about the punch angle drove it in and stepped off. So that's not ideal right there. It's not a project-ending error. It's just not what I had in mind. Okay. Still wants to set. You can see that's a concrete pocket. It's not going to chip through that. That's going to be a little ugly. This isn't a final shape. This is just giving ourselves the opportunity to continue in other ways. And this right here is going to be a bit of an ugly spot in the finished project. Guess what? Your chipping stone is going to have some character. What's the best way? Okay. The problem is I've got steps on either side. I don't want to continue right like I am there. I'm going to try and take down this edge a little bit. This proud edge. Before I work on that. So we're going to do exactly the same thing. Make a couple of opportunities. This is the easy edge to work. Okay. You know what's the most fun about this? When the tool slips and you hit your knuckle. That's the best right there.
That's when you say, gosh golly, you whizzers.
Yes. Okay. You can see we're taking the same sort of flake. This prominent bulb of percussion that's real typical of these punch flakes. Right? But this is removing some of the mass from here, so it will be easier. When I really go into that edge, it'll be easier to work. Get it off. Okay, now there's a chance in taking this off but I'll be able to get a good opportunity here, start here and work that way. That would be ideal. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but it would be ideal if it does. Okay, we're getting flatter. And this whole big lump needs to come off, so I don't mind coming down in low and really digging in a bit. Let's see here. There. Okay, good. So I took that off. I can get in there. Okay. Do you see how I started getting a punch right in there, and then I could get back the other direction here, and I got back the other direction here, and I'm taking and slowly working my position of opportunity toward the piece I want to take off. Mm-hmm. Okay? I'm very, very close. I'm also undercutting it. Okay? So now I have a hollow right along here. Instead of a slope up this way that I can't work on, the piece is globally flat. I'm not sure if it's going to show up here. If I bridge that, you can see light underneath it. So I've got a hollow right there, and I can put the tool in here and then start on that edge.
Awesome.
So it's just kind of, every piece has its own challenge.
And character.
And character. That, okay, there was more cortex there than I thought there was. Let me try again. Still can get in. There. Okay, now I have that bulb. So, okay, that just took the tiniest little flake. It bounced somewhere. It bounced over my shoulder. But it just went from here to there. But it made a bulb so I can get in there. And we can keep going. And that's it. It's when you're doing normal flint knapping, there. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting somewhere. When you're doing normal bifacial flint knapping, it's all about getting the big flakes. Because it's all about getting things as thin as quickly as possible. This is not about big flakes. This is about control. And using these little flakes to finesse your way into a position of control. Okay? So it's a very different knapping strategy. Okay? That was bad. Let me find that flake. That was an overshot flake. Here we go. It'll be recoverable because of the side that it happened on, but see how this went down?
Oh.
And you know that pretty edge I spent all that time working?
Oops.
Oops. Now I've got to start over. Okay. So how does that happen? Well, I needed to have the punch at about that angle, and instead I had the punch at about that angle.
Yeah.
So it dug in too deep.
That'll do it.
Okay.
That'll do it.
And that's the tricky part. And that is the part that I am still working on. And that is also why I left it really wide. Okay? So that we have room to recover our mistakes. So, we keep going. It's not ruined. We made a little extra work for ourselves, but it's not ruined. See, I'm trying to keep as low an angle as I can. It's very easy to remove big chunks with this. We don't want to remove big chunks. We want to maintain control and get a nice beautifully stitched edge. And I mean, we are. This edge is really nice. This edge is really nice coming in there. This got wonky. That's why I started over here to work back. But we have lots of we have lots of width to work with, so we'll get a nice piece. It'll be good. But now here, I'm trying to get underneath this cortex, and it's fighting me because the flakes want to come in and then just break off when they hit the cortex. So I do need to dig in a little deeper here. This is risky. Didn't go. Okay. But I might be able to just attack that directly here. There we go. Okay. Not the prettiest spot, but we're not done. So, because I lost this, you can see how this kind of dips out that way. I'm going to take another couple of flakes right here in the tip region, just to set it back to an agreeable shape. Okay. I'm not going to be too obsessive on that right now. And then I will do the same set of techniques. This was the hard part. Getting these two lines straight, that was the hard part. I am going to, so this video doesn't turn too absurdly long, I am going to get a stitched edge here and a stitched edge here, which is just going to be finesse, right? Very flat angle. I have to go the other way first. Right, very flat angle, very small flakes, and very tedious and time consuming. Okay. So I am going to do this tedious, time consuming, yet straightforward part off camera, and then we'll come back and look at the piece as it evolves. Took a little bit of time and worked this stitching notch pattern all the way around the flatter, easier to work side. And this was a lot, it was a lot easier, right? This was already beautifully flat. I had the overhang in the easy direction, so I just advanced the notch around, right? So now I have evened out the sides a little bit, right? So there were a couple of goobers in here that I did take off while I was doing that. I largely avoided overshots. I did have an overshot right here in this area, but that's okay because I don't need to do anything in that area again. It's happy, right? So I don't care. And I did have an overshot right here, but this was already a problem spot, and it's not. This face is never going to be as beautiful and flat as this face. Okay? So I'm okay with that. Now, what do I still want to do up here? I would love to get rid of this cortex and that cortex. But if you look at my thickness, I don't really want to get any thinner. So I'm not obsessed with that idea. If it becomes available, I'll take the flake. If it doesn't become available, I'm not going to push it. And this is a point, especially, that I really recommend you think about, especially when you're working with a more difficult material like Texas. Right? If you're working with, black butter dacite, or you're working with novaculite, or you're working with one of these, super crazy, amazing jaspers that pop out here and there along the Appalachian margin, right? Yeah, chase that flake and make the most beautiful thing you can, but when we're working with a more difficult material, I'm still operating and making myself operate in the mindset of somebody who's trying to make a tool, not so much a piece of high art, right? I want to master the skills of making tools to master other skills with the tools, So That's my mindset. And that's different from a lot of modern napping that where it has just become a fine art because, people never intend to use the piece that they're making toward any actual use.
And it's all pretty.
It's beautiful. Oh, no, no, no. I'm not knocking that. I'm not knocking that at all. I'm stating my mental space and design parameters as I'm going through this, right? So I don't care about that. If I have the chance to knock it off, I'd love to. But I'm not going to chase it and risk losing the whole piece, right? So now the next thing that we need to do is, turns out, that's not very sharp, right? So we need to take this and we need to start building the edge. Now, if this was being squared off from a biface, you would already have something of an edge here that you could work from, using typical bifacing techniques, working back and forth this way. We don't have that, so we're going to continue with square edge techniques. Now, I really don't want to do any more than absolutely necessary on the side, because this is already, the kind of the minimum thickness that I want, right? So I don't want to do too much back here, and I don't want to narrow this in any more than I have to, okay? So I'm going to have to a little bit. But I'm going to try to work from these edges and get this as close as possible to a sharp edge with the minimum necessary reduction in mass from other directions. Okay. Working on these edges is very easy to come in from these edges and just blow off gobs of material very quickly. So I'm not being too obsessive about the shape of this edge at this point. I know I can always go back and knock off a high spot. So where do I have the best approaches? I've got some really good spots right here. Some really good spots right here. This top on this face is still a little more difficult, but we'll get there. I want to do as much as I can where I have the best approaches first. So we're just going to go in just as we had been. And good and anchored. And now, before, when I was working on this face, I was getting the tool as flat as I could to just barely nip the edge because I didn't want to remove a lot of thickness. Here, I want to get in, and I want to blow off a big chunk. So I'm going to hold it much closer to vertical. Okay. So that did terminate on that ridge. We're going to have to deal with that ridge. But it's not really deal-withable yet. Let me try to take a flake from this other side. And so I know that's going to be a problem. I'm going to accentuate it before I remove it. Ooh, and okay, that's skidded right across.
Beautiful.
Right? That's an ideal flake.
Awesome.
Okay, let's try to get some more. Come in a little bit here. Good. Again, we did take off more of this. That's the goal. Now this is more approachable from that point. I don't really care which side I take a flake from. I'm going to need to take an equal number from both, so I'm just taking the best flake I can with any given geometry at any given time. Okay. Terminated a little bit short, didn't go as far as I wanted. We're still okay. I mean, you can see how much closer to straight that is already, just from those few flakes. Do I have any more platforms? I don't have good ones here. I have some good ones on this face, so let's work there a little bit. Yeah, we'll see if I can get this. I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. Nope. Okay, so I'm not sure if the camera's going to pick it up, because there's two big copper streaks right there. Because when it hit, it glanced off. There's not enough lip there to dig. I do have enough lip right here, but it's not going to travel because I have the lip I can get on right there, but I have a concavity, so the flake won't travel. So I've got to stop working on that edge, and I need to reshape my contours a little bit. Okay. So I did take a little off the side. That's unavoidable. But now, when I put the tool, you can maybe see it here, when I put the tool here, you see the impact is below that concavity. And I'm dropping things. There we go. Okay, so let's go for that flake. Good.
Awesome.
Okay. We're building toward our edge now. Can still take another one here. Even that out nice. Where's the flake? There's the flake. Okay. And all the way across. That's already a bad contour. So if I can get an over... I'm going to have to rebuild a workable contour here anyway. So if I can get an overshot from the easy side, totally happy with it. Now, these sort of transverse flakes across an edge is a traditional way to sharpen some axe types. The square section Danish axes were always ground sharp, but the flake axes and a lot of other European styles of axe were always sharpened with a final transverse flake like that. So, am I making this up as I go? Yeah, a little bit, because I just want to make the best thing that I can. I'm not being obsessive about this must be a particular set of technologies. But everything that I'm doing is genuinely traditional. I want to get this off. That's going to have to go eventually anyway. And I have an avenue to do it, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Okay. There. Nice, flat, and even. That's a big concavity that may or may not be a problem later on, but it will be easy to remove. And I've got plenty of width to work with. I'm trying not to use that width, but when I have to, I can. Okay. Let's see what we got on this other side again. Gonna have to do this. I'm procrastinating on it, I know. Now, I'm procrastinating on it for a reason. Because to get this to a workable shape, to take this goober of material off, I'm going to have to start here and walk back to the corner. And I'm going to lose width in this direction, walking that over. Okay? I don't want to just do that now because that glob of mass is annoying me, which it is. I want to wait to do that until I see what contours present themselves from other work. Because I might not have to do as much, or I might have to do more. Okay. Over here, I think I can get on that. I think. Yep. I think I can. I think I did. Okay, so there's the contour. Here was the tool position with a steep angle. And there's the flake.
Beautiful.
Okay. Now I'll show you the end. You see how we're starting to build an actual... It's a little more choppy looking already. Still, I mean, dull as a hoe, but it's a little more choppy looking at least. You can start to imagine what it's going to be, you know. Okay. And now I still have a good ridge here, so I'm going to... Nope, I lied. I can't get the tool in. Okay? I'm going to have to reshape that. But I think I can get a good one over here. So again, I'm taking all of the good stuff before I go and do... Okay, that evened that out nice. I'm taking all of the I'm taking all the free stuff before I have to go into the things that I'm going to have to really work for. Okay. Did something. What'd it do? Little flake.
Still a good one though.
Still a good one. Still good. And that's not, a scary turtleback right there. Because I have an approach from this side and an approach from this side. So I have 2 chances to get that off. So I'm not too worried. I think studying it a minute. The mass is a little closer to this side. So I think I want to try to get it from this side first. Now this, you see there's a little embedded flake where that started to fracture but didn't come through.
Mm-hmm.
Never hit those. They'll always let you down. So I need to reshape that platform a little bit. There. That's all I took off. Teeny tiny little, not even a fingernail worth of material. Okay? But now if you look at it, I've accentuated the divot. I can dig in deeper, and I've gotten rid of that little shattery Aurelier flake. So now I can go. And full overshot. Beautiful. That was really, really good. Okay. The only thing I don't like about it, I wish it would have just skidded off the corner. It took my platform to work on the other side. But that's okay. Not the end of the world. Because I can...
You can do it.
That's dull. Skittering off. Can't do that. Where to work? Where to work? I'm going to wait on that a minute. I'm just going to wait on that a minute. I'm going to work this corner. We have to do it. We have to do it. There's not as much in our way now. There. 2 flakes. I did lose a little bit, but I was going to need to square that off anyway, so okay, whatever. And now I should be able to get in to this lip, angle my blow this way toward the edge, and take off that area. Don't need a real long flake, just a good blending flake, and did what it needed to. Right? So now, you see we've got a nice flat edge coming in. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. Clean that up a little bit. Now I think I can use this little platform to clean up some of this spot that I said wasn't pretty looking. There. Just a nice little cleaning flake. That's all we wanted. That's what we got. All good. Happy with that. Okay, we still need to get this. Where's the best way to go? Take your time and study your rocks. Okay. This is going to cost some width. See, I've got to make a platform here, and I've got just a step fracture and garbage in there. I cannot get a tool effectively on that.
Mm-hmm.
I can put it here and try to take that bit off. There's a good chance it's just going to make that step fracture worse. Or I can come behind it in there, take this off. which is a much better chance of cleaning that up, but at the cost of more width. And I think I need to do this way and just sacrifice that bit of width. Okay, see how this goes. Now I am coming at a low angle because I don't want to overshoot right now. Okay.
That fix it?
Yep.
Awesome.
So now we have a good contour. Definitely have a good contour there. It did overshoot a little bit, but it just... This ridge was huge, and it just kind of skidded off the top. So while it did take a little bit, here if I lean that out, did take a little bit of that off, I still have more than enough ability to get the tool in there if I need to. So that was a good overshot, not a bad overshot. Now on this one, I'm trying to dig out that hump. So I want the tool at a steep angle rather than a shallow angle. Okay, piece turned. Doesn't want to go. Ooh, okay, that was a somewhat unfortunate. Somewhat unfortunate. It did take off a part of the ridge, but it went in and chattered. So here's what happened. Those first two where the flake didn't release, it made a cone. And then after the cone formed, when I actually got it up a little bit, because there were pre-existing cones of fracture in there, the flake didn't travel its natural path as much as it jittered around those cones. So that's why that was a bad flake. That's not the rock's fault, that's my fault. I'm going to try and take a cleaning flake here. We'll probably have to come in from the other direction. Okay. Yep, that was good enough. Good. If I can figure out how to put this back on. There we are. There we go. Okay. So there's the flake. We did clean that up. We thinned out our edge profile a little bit more. Okay. But you can still see, right, there's the edge of one of those cones, and there's the edge of one of those cones. Actually, that's the same cone. It was just going right along there. So, we'll clean that all up before we're all done. That's not going to be devastating. If I need to get on this ridge a little bit more, I've got to make a platform right there. Okay, that's not going to go that way. Start modifying how I'm holding this thing. There. Okay. Made a little step fracture there. That's okay. Now I think that's just good enough. Get another chunk of that out. Just being stubborn. Does not want to come. Does not want to come. Okay, well, if it doesn't want to come, it's just going to stay. I don't have another good approach to get in there, because I know this cone is going to kind of mess with me over here, and this is sloping too far in the wrong direction. We're just going to live with it for now. Now this edge is close enough to good that I can do a little bit of normal flint knapping. Take that down. Okay. Just a little bit of back and forth zigzag flint knapping. Just like any other biface with a square edge on it when you want to remove the square edge. Okay. So there, we've reduced this edge, that big fat edge. Like, remember how big fat that edge was, right? We've reduced this, and we haven't lost hardly any length. I mean, a little bit just now when I, switched to the bopper. But you can still see that white margin that's, influenced by the cortex. Okay? That's still present. I watched a video, a master napper, D.C. Waldorf, one time where he took a chunk that was just an impossible looking chunk. And, this big turtlebacky monstrosity that, everybody would say, oh, you can't make anything out of that. And he used a square edge punching to create a conventional biface, working off of the edges just like I did there without losing any space. So that was a real good video. It was Beyond Thrashing and Bashing was the name of the video, if you're interested. It was a real neat. Make use of these. We have copper. Use it. Okay, so I'm just kind of looking this over. It is shaped, right? This is the final dimensions. This is an axe. Where's the one I had before?
It's back there.
It's back there? There we are. Right. So if you look at this finished one, right, this one's just a little bit longer, and it's just a little bit wider. And I like that. I don't want to make it any smaller. So now we're just in the clean-up phase. Okay? This is still annoying me a little bit. I wish that wasn't there. But I'm not sure what I can do with it. Same with this. There is a chance I might be able to do something with that yet. But the first thing I want to do in the cleanup phase is I'm going to go back over these edges and with very, very shallow, very light taps, make these, these are big, aggressive dig-out flakes. I don't want big, aggressive dig-out flakes. I want nice, gentle, controlled contours. So I'm going to go back over these just with the tip of the punch, very, very lightly. And as I'm doing this, if I get the opportunity to take off a goober that's annoying me, I will take advantage of that opportunity. I'm going to try and get one right off of that. I've been debating on whether or not to try that this whole process. Just going to give it a light tap. If it skates off, we're done. If it digs in and bites that nastiness, we'll be happy. That did nice. That did nice. Make that just a little more even. Okay. Now I can get in here. It is important when you're napping to have patience and not try to take a flake. Good. Don't try to take a flake that the rock won't give you. You will always mess up your work. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, but I did make some big digs, so I'm just gonna again. This punch is almost laying on top of the piece, right? Let me get my hands out of the way, right? It's basically there, but I'm just tipping it up just enough
To catch the lip.
to catch the lip. And like right now, my thumb and forefinger is right where you could see it there. I'm just holding it down flat, giving it the slightest little tap. Right? It might not even pick up on camera what that flake was, right? But it's a little bit more even now. That's all I'm doing here with these cleanup flakes. Because I'm not intending to use these platforms for anything else. I'm trying to flatten out those concavities now because I'm done using them. I'm not trying to make new ones, because making new ones would involve changing the size of the rock, which I no longer want to do. Okay, that's a nice even line. Okay. This is going to take some time. I'm just doing what you see me doing. I'm going to turn the camera off for a few minutes, make some progress, and at any point that I find a bit of a teachable moment, I'll turn it back on and show you a specific tip. This edge is finished with the punch, right? I'm done punching this. We'll do more here to clean that up just a little bit more with pressure, but I'm done with the punch. Then I turned and I started working down this edge, and in the process of cleaning this up, the stone has given me an opportunity to take off this goober, I hope. Right, so if you look at the geometry here, it's relatively flat at this point. Okay, there's no undercut. And when I took this cleaning flake off from there, it undercut this enough that I think I can get the punch in here.
Yeah.
Okay, trying to do this so you can see it. It's hard. Fiddly little things with fingers.
They can see.
Okay, so I can get the punch in here and direct the energy back toward the tail of the piece. I might be able to get that last obnoxious chunk off of this side. We'll see how it goes. Ha ha! That was a happy flake. That was a real happy flake.
Yay!
Okay? Look at it now.
Beautiful.
Here's where it was before.
Yeah.
I took my time. Right, remember way back in this initial pass, when I was working on this and it was getting all chattery back in there, I didn't keep thrashing at it. I let it go because I knew that the contours would be very different till this project was finished. Now, it's only just now that I had the opportunity to get the tool right there and take off that lovely flake. Be patient with your projects. Work with the stone, don't fight it. Okay? So we only have that little bit of cortex in there, and I don't care about that at all. Right? I don't want this any thinner. Even if I get an opportunity to take a flake there, I'm not going to take it. Right? So, we're good. We're good. Moving on. Back to the slow, tedious business. Another little update. So this is nice and smooth. These edges are coming into control very nicely. And I've done the same on both of these. Now in the process of doing that, I've exposed, just like over here I exposed this location to get that goober off, I've exposed a spot here that I think I can get in and at least reduce this mound. We'll see. This will be the last opportunity to attack that particular undesirable high spot. It will either go or it won't, and we will be satisfied and stop beating at it either way. Ah, no, not quite what I wanted. And that's because of those cones that I set up in there from the other side, so. Darn it. Okay, well, we've got that spot. That's just going to stay there, is what it is. Okay?
That's the nature of Texas Chert.
Well, no. You can't blame the rock for that. My punch was a little bit too straight in and not angled back quite enough. And it just set up some pre-existing fractures in there.
Gotcha.
That's the nature of making an error in the finishing stages.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough.
I've got a step fracture here, so there is no possible way I can work in from this side. And I've got a rolled edge here, so there's no possible way of working in for that side. That's okay. Again, it's still a useful point. It's still flat. It's still smooth. It's still haftable. If anything, that would make it a little easier to haft.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a problem. If you're thinking about this in terms of making a usable axe, it's not a problem. If you're thinking of it in terms of making a perfectly looking axe, it just annoys me a little bit, right? But that's okay. We're going to live with it. We're not going to let it annoy us. That's a bald-faced lie. It's going to annoy us. But we're going to accept it anyway. Okay. Now, the way to finish this off the rest of the way is with pressure flaking. So I'm putting away that punch, even though there's still some real high spots here and some sharp edges. We don't want sharp edges in our hafting area. But I'm putting away the punch, because if I put the punch on these, I'm going to thin it out mightily, and you can see this is already getting on the thin side. Okay? So what we're going to do to finish it is just take a pressure flaker, just like we would with any regular flint knapping. We're just going to chip off all of those edges. Okay, do that for a little bit from one direction, and then we'll switch. Do it from the other direction. And we're just blunting the edge. So anywhere I can get the pressure flaker, I'm flipping off the contour that allows me to seat the pressure flaker. Anywhere I can't seat the pressure flaker, I don't care, because that means it's already flat contour. Okay? We're not trying to get long flakes. We're just trying to get control in the edge. Now, if you look at pictures of the really old axes that were made this way, they have so much control coming off of the punch to the pressure flaker that they're doing direction A, direction B, direction A, direction B in a zigzag all the way across, and it looks beautiful, like perfect stitching. This is not that well controlled. I have room to practice on that, right? There always is, and every time I make one of these, I'm trying to enter. One of my personal mental goals is to enter the pressure flaking stage with better control than the previous. Okay. And each one does look better than the last one in that regard. That's where I'm trying to learn and skill build.
There is always room to improve.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I don't want you to think you have to make a perfect thing to make a thing. And there's also differences in rock, right? Not every rock is going to let you get the same tool as some other rock. This is not like you're, making a model and you're going to go buy a sheet of homogeneous foam and carve it into a perfect shape. Or 3D print a pattern to sand cast. Right, you don't get to just 100% exert your will upon the material. The material definitely has a say too. Okay, So there, you can see the difference between... Can they see the edge of this, beloved?
Yeah.
On my fingers? Okay. You see how this is real jagged and rough? And now on this side, yes, there's some pinnacles, there's some high spots, but it's much, much smoother. Now again, things that I'm not going to let annoy me, this little ridge and that little pinnacle isn't my favorite. And this is where the control that you have when you end with the pressure flaking has a lot to do with the final shape after pressure flaking, right? So I didn't take a flake here because it would thin down the bit too much, right? That's why. But it still leaves this little ridge, which I think is a little bit unsightly. It's not my preferred contour, but it's okay, right? And so this is where my personal goal with this is to get better and better at having really even, regular flakes at the end of the indirect percussion stage. So I'm going to do the other 3 edges just the way I did this, and then we'll pop back on. Here's what it looks like with all of those edges worked in, evened off, smoothed out, and it's really starting to look nice. Now, part of the reason so much care was taken historically in getting all of this right and tight is because these flint axes would then be ground with sand or a block of sand on some sort of matati or a block of sandstone. So you're sanding quartz with quartz. Can you do that in a braid your tool? Yes, absolutely you can. But the grit you're using to grind your blade is the same hardness as the blade you're grinding. That works, but very, very slow because you're grinding down your grit and your work at the same time, at the same speed, right? So it's kind of like trying to sand a piece of wood using sawdust from the same piece of wood. Will you eventually abrade the wood and smooth it and make it look nice? Yes. Is it efficient? Oh gosh, no. Right? So the folks that were doing that had a vested interest in getting it as smooth as humanly possible before they went to that long, arduous, tedious step. And if we look at, historic accounts of people doing work with flint axes, there would usually be about 2 sharpeners for every craftsman wielding the axe. So one craftsman would have 3 blades, would be working with one, and then 2 buddies each sharpening of one of the other blades, and then switch it out when the one that was being worked with got dull. So yeah, that's a long, arduous process. So there was a very big vested interest in having the blank as smooth as possible at the end of the napping. So the last thing I want to do, and I'm going to show you some other pieces of work here and where we're going with future projects. The last thing I want to do is to work on this edge. Okay, so you see it's still got the zigzags from the standard percussion napping. And I'm just going to take the pressure flaker and bring it to an even median line. Okay. Now, this material is kind of hard for me to get. It does take resources. I'm working on learning some more skills so I can bring them to all of you folks. And, if you have any interest in helping out and fostering with this channel and projects, make sure you're subscribed because it does help the algorithm send it out to more folks and like the individual videos. And then especially on the resources side, we do have a Patreon if you're so inclined. And there's a lot of resources there. Research that I've done and compiled and made available as digital resources. Okay. So this is coming in. Cleaning up a couple little spots. I know some of what I'm working on here is so fine that it's not really going to pick up well on the video. Just seeing some little pinnacles and valleys that I'm averaging out the elevation on. I'm sure there's an English teacher that just cringed at that sentence structure. Sorry. Okay. Pretty nice even edge contour. Yeah. Okay. Couple little things I might putter at later, but that is a basically finished blank. For a culture, you know, again, I'm kind of zooming out. Like, this is specifically a North European style that I just made. Thin butt, square section axe in Flint. Or Chert. I'm not trying to get into the larger what is Flint conversation here, but that's a conversation for another video. But we kept our full length of the stone, right? You can still see the white from where this edge was in contact with the cortex on the bit edge. And there's still unworked cortex on the butt of this axe. Okay? So we kept our full length. Some observations I've made while, you know, learning and practicing and figuring out how to execute this technique is it's been amazing to me just how quickly these reduce in mass. Right? When you're making a conventional biface, right? Where's a biface? Here's a biface, right? When you're making a conventional biface, you expand a lot of edge for relatively little reduction in thickness, right? So you're trying to get your flakes to go all the way across so you can thin thickness as quickly as possible because you know your edge is going to get eaten away simultaneously, right? But when you get to your final thickness, you're there. So one of the things that I had to tinker with in figuring out when I was learning to making these things is the rock that this came out of, this is an earlier one, was a little bigger than the rock that this came out of. Not massively bigger, but a smidgen bigger, maybe 10% bigger, and this blade is maybe 10% smaller. So when I was doing the early percussion and getting it in close to what I thought the finished shape was going to be, I overshot in the initial percussion, and then when I started working it in and doing the square edge punch work, it just lost mass so quickly because you're working from all four directions, right? When you're doing a biface, you lose mass rapidly from one direction and slowly from another direction. When you're doing this, you lose mass rapidly from all directions. So you need to leave your early stage preform a lot bigger than you're used to doing if you're just used to working on a biface. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's an interesting note. Now these are both nice pieces that I'm very happy to have been able to make. Okay, where I have work to do, you know, my own future research for future write-ups, so to speak. If you're used to academic publication, you know what that is, right? So my future research section, last paragraph of this little video, is, like I said earlier, getting better control of the punch work before I go to pressure flaking. That's where I'm trying to improve on each one of these that I make, right? Mm-hmm. Get better, get flatter contours from the percussion going into punch, and then flatter contours from the punch going into pressure flake, okay? That's where I'm trying to improve gradually on these. And also, figuring out, I alluded at the very beginning of this video to the, Polynesian and Melanesian square section adze blades. And they have just befuddled me up to this point. I'll show you the two that I failed at. Right? I don't want you to think that, everything I do is perfect here, right? We have a learning process. These both came out of rocks the same size as this. Okay? But this one came closest to the right contour, even though it's a little midget dwarf tool, right? The Polynesian form typically comes in toward the top. It's called a hog's back adze, okay, because of that. it usually has a bit of a hollow. Try to aim this at the camera that way. It has a bit of a hollow here, and a bit of a swelling right by the butt. So I kind of got it, but I got the angle is going toward the bottom, whereas the slope should be toward the top. So I totally failed in that regard. Now, why they have this hollow and a flaring base is because they're hafted. Do it this way. They're hafted like this.
That's
There. Down? There we go. Can you see, beloved?
Yes.
Right? They're hafted like this on a bent stick.
Gotcha.
And then wrapped with rawhide or cordage or, whatever's available in a particular island system to be lashed onto that stick. And then that's how they're used. And either there's something wrong with how I'm visualizing the preform, or the suite of techniques that I'm doing with copper are just not appropriate for this form. And I've just got to tinker and make more and screw a few more up in the process of figuring out that answer. Right? So I'm going to keep working on this, but, again, this takes a lot of stone and a lot of resources, and stone's not cheap when you have to buy it by mail. Right? So I'll figure this out eventually and do a video on it, but, I wanted to show what I'm working on and some of my unsuccessful ones, along with the basic tool set for making this European version of the square section tool. Right? So don't be afraid to try something, and don't be discouraged when it doesn't come out quite the way you hoped. That's a natural part of the learning process. Your most valuable teachers are your unsuccessful attempts. Right? That's where you learn. That's where you really learn. So I will keep puttering, and I hope that you do as well. Keep learning, keep adding to your skill set, keep thinking what's just beyond my reach, and then going and reaching it. And I hope that while continuing that, you'll keep joining us here at Old Ways Rising Farm.